Welcome to The Bitter Witness.
Don't be scared.
Hello, welcome back. I'm Rebecca, and I'm your host for The Bitter Witness. I hope you've had a good week. I have had a week. All I'm going to say is that my brain has not stopped turning, and it has been shit piles upon shit piles around here. But instead of focusing on the part of my life that is all nasty and shitty, I'm going to tell you that spring has arrived in Ontario. We have hit plus temperatures and almost all the snow is gone off of my gardens and my lawn, which means I can get back in the dirt and start planting and organizing my gardens very soon. As well, my son, who lives 8 hours away from me, came home for a visit, and I was finally able to get his Christmas gifts out of my living room. Oh, I have an apology to send out from last week's show. I was somehow able to say RCMP Officer Michael Eastom's name correctly the first time I said it in the episode, and then I totally said his name incorrectly for the rest of the episode. So, I apologize, Officer Eastom, for calling you Eastman through the entire episode last week. I'll try and get the words right this week, but there is absolutely no promise on that one. Well, that's about it for my little corner of Ontario. Let's get the business out of the way, shall we? If you like this episode or any episode, please head on over to the Patreon page and give the show some love. For less than a cheap ice scraper, you can help me keep bringing you crime cases each week. You can also support the show on Spotify, and don't forget to give the show a 5-star review over on Apple. Apparently, it helps the show in the inexplicable algorithm. Like, follow, and share the show on whatever platform you're listening to. Stop by our Facebook page and leave a comment or share a post. Everyone is welcome here. That's enough of the business. Let's get to this week's case. The dogs are sleeping behind me, so puppy ASMR will be brought to you by both Miley and Piper this week. So grab a cup of tea, sit back and relax while I tell you about the case of the murder of Marlene Warren. As always, I want to give our victims in the case top billing. Marlene, and to all her family and loved ones, I send my love to you wherever you may be. It was a seemingly ordinary late morning when a knock echoed through the Warren home. Marlene, drawn by the sound, opened the door to a scene that initially evoked feelings of warmth and nostalgia. Standing before her was a clown, complete with a painted-on smile, a bright orange wig, and a bouquet of flowers and balloons clutched in its oversized hands. In that moment, a flicker of childhood wonder likely danced in Marlene's eyes. The fear of clowns, or coulrophobia, is a very real and often intense phobia for many. Clowns are traditionally meant to embody innocence and the carefree joy of childhood. But for some, they represent something far more sinister. The painted-on smile, perpetually fixed and unwavering, can be deeply unsettling. It begs the question, what lies behind that forced expression? Who is the person concealed beneath the costume, the makeup, and the elaborate disguise? Why the need to mask one's true identity to supposedly bring joy to others? This inherent ambiguity and anonymity can trigger a primal fear, the suspicion that something malevolent might be lurking behind that facade of forced merriment, a chilling possibility that shatters the illusion of harmless fun. This was no ordinary clown that knocked on Marlene's door. This clown was a harbinger of darkness, a wolf in sheep's clothing, a terrifying inversion of everything a clown is supposed to represent. Beneath the garish makeup and the cheerful demeanor lay a sinister intent, a cold and calculated plan waiting to be unleashed. As Marlene smiled, perhaps captivated by the unexpected and slightly absurd spectacle, the clown raised a gun and fired. The illusion of innocence and joy shattered and transformed the foyer of the Warren home into a scene of unspeakable horror. Marlene May McKinnon Warren was born on April 15, 1950, in Mount Clemens, Michigan, to Leonard and Shirley Ann McKinnon. Marlene met Mike Warren in 1970. She was 20 and he was 18. The two started dating and fell in love, and on April 27, 1972, Marlene married Mike Warren. In May of 1990, Mike and Marlene Warren lived in an affluent neighborhood in Wellington, Florida. The neighborhood they lived in was called Aero Club Community. This place was rich, like really rich. Every house inside this exclusive neighborhood had their own private runway for their airplanes. Like they had planes lined up like they were cars in the driveway. Can you imagine? I feel like visiting Mom in New York today. Grab the keys, head out the back door, and hop in your private plane and then just take off? I can't imagine having that much luxury surrounding me. Wait. Yes, I can. In 1990, Marlene was 40 years old, but her life hadn't always been full of luxury and private planes. She had worked for what she had. By 1990, Marlene owned many rental properties in West Palm Beach, Florida, a car rental business, her own airplane, and a racehorse. When Marlene was a teenager, she had married her first husband and had 2 sons with him, John Jr. and Joseph. When she was 20, the marriage had ended, and Marlene found herself a single mother with 2 small boys. Then Marlene met Mike Warren. Mike ran the rental car business called A Bargain Motors. In 1988, sadly and tragically, John Jr. was killed in a car accident. It was at this point that Mike and Marlene's marriage started showing some cracks. Marlene tried to keep things together for her remaining son Joey, but it wasn't working. With the devastating grief that Marlene was suffering, nothing seemed to be helping. It's so sad when this sort of thing happens. The heartache that is within that home, everyone can feel it, and it can be very overwhelming. On Saturday, May 26, 1990, Marlene was having breakfast with Joey and a couple of his friends, Wendell and Jean Pratt and Mindy Perez. At approximately 10:45, the group saw a white Chrysler LeBaron drive into the family's driveway and a clown get out of the car and start heading for the front door. Joey had recently broke his leg, and everyone thought that it was probably a get-well wish from a friend, like one of those singing telegram things. So Marlene went to answer the door. A few seconds later, there was a knock at the front door. From the kitchen, Joey and his friends heard Marlene exclaim, "Oh, how pretty! How nice!" The next thing they heard was a gunshot. Joey and his friends ran out to the front door, only to see Marlene laying on the ground, covered in blood, and a person dressed as a clown standing in the doorway. Joey stated in an interview that the 2 locked eyes for a solid few seconds. The clown's eyes were, as Joey described them, cold and deep brown. After the eye lock, the clown turned and sauntered back to the LeBaron, jumped in, and drove away. Beside Marlene on the floor was a basket of flowers with 2 balloons tied to it. One balloon read, "You're the greatest," and the other had a picture of Snow White and the 7 dwarfs on it. Marlene had been shot in the face at point-blank range, but was still alive and gasping for air. A neighbor, Bill Krumer, was out walking his dog when he thought he heard a nail gun being triggered. And then he heard someone screaming, "They shot Joey's mother!" Bill and his wife ran over to the Warren home to try and help. Bill's wife called 911 and Marlene was rushed to the hospital. But shortly after arriving, she was pronounced brain dead and placed on life support. After 2 days, the family made the agonizing decision to remove the life support, and Marlene died shortly after that. Police began their investigation by speaking with Mike Warren. At the time of the murder, Mike was on his way to a Miami racetrack with a group of friends. The description that the police had to work with didn't really help much. Orange and yellow hair, white face, red bulbous nose, and large red smiling lips. The clown wore a common multicolored clown costume. But the one thing that was odd about the clown getup was that instead of giant clown shoes that usually accompanies a costume like this, the clown was wearing combat boots. Think Doc Martens. If you're from my generation, that is Generation X, you know what I'm talking about. Joey stated to the police that without the boots, the person wearing the costume was probably around 5'10" or 6 feet tall. They had larger sized hands and walked like a man. Joey believed the clown was a man. When police asked Mike if Marlene had any enemies, the only thing he could think of was that Marlene took care of the rental properties, and she was the one who would do the evictions when renters were behind on their rent. Maybe someone she had evicted wanted revenge. But when police looked into Mike's thoughts about those who had been evicted, they soon found that, in fact, Marlene hadn't evicted anyone recently, and that for the most part, if a renter was struggling, Marlene would work with them so that they wouldn't lose their homes. The police really had no leads. Evidence from the crime scene was sparse, to say the least. Police found some orange and yellow strands of synthetic hair from the clown wig stuck to the ribbon that was tied to the balloons, as both the balloons and the basket of flowers had been left behind by the clown. A couple of days after the murder, an anonymous tip came into the police. The caller told the police that they should be looking at Mike Warren and a woman named Sheila Keene. Sheila and her husband, Richard Spud Keene, worked for Mike as repo agents. According to the caller, there were many rumors that Mike and Sheila were having an affair. Sheila and Spud had married on May 13, 1987, and police found that on January 17, 1990, just a few months prior to Marlene's murder, Sheila had filed a report with police accusing Spud of domestic violence and had moved out. But not only did Sheila move out of her home with Spud, but she had moved into an apartment that had been paid for by Mike Warren. Police went to Marlene's parents and interviewed them to see if Marlene had said anything to them about hers and Mike's marriage, which I think is a brilliant move. If you want to really know what is going on in a marriage, talk to the woman's mom or her best friend. They know everything. Marlene's mom and dad told the police that Marlene was having suspicions about Mike. She thought he was having an affair, but she hadn't figured out all the details before she was murdered. Because the clown had left the balloons and flowers behind, police were able to figure out that the flowers and balloons were purchased at Publix supermarket located at 2948 North Military Trail in West Palm Beach. 2 employees there remembered that it was a woman who had purchased the balloons and basket of flowers. They described her as a white woman, tall, with long, straight, dark brown hair pulled back in a ponytail. They said that she had the mannerisms of a man. The woman bought the balloons and basket of flowers at about 8:45 a.m. on the day of the shooting, just 2 hours before that gift was delivered to Marlene. The public store was only 1 mile from Sheila Keene's apartment. Then the police were able to locate the costume store where the clown costume was purchased. Spotlight Costumes. 2 employees there remembered that just 2 days before the murder, a woman came rushing into the store right before they were closing and demanded to see all their clown costumes. The employees had asked her to come back the next day as they were about to close up for the night, but this woman stated that it was really important and she needed the clown costume that night. So the reluctant employees started pulling out what clown inventory they had for her. The woman bought the entire clown outfit minus a pair of clown shoes. Then she said that she needed clown base, which is the white makeup that clowns use to cover their skin. The employees remembered this because the woman was adamant that she have enough clown base to thickly cover her entire face. The 2 employees at the costume shop described a very similar woman as the 2 employees from the public supermarket. A white woman, thin, tall, with long brown hair. Later, the 2 costume shop employees would be shown a picture lineup, and they would both pick Sheila out of that lineup. Can we just stop here for a second and acknowledge just how stupid this woman is? Now, I don't want to give anyone ideas, but for the love of God, maybe disguise yourself when you're buying balloons and flowers on the same day you plan to use them as a distraction to murder someone. Or hey, here's a thought. Don't go to your own grocery store a fucking mile away from your apartment. And who pushes their way into a costume shop at closing to buy their entire disguise they're going to use to commit a murder? I mean, really, thank God for stupid criminals. The police knew that Mike had an alibi for the time of the shooting, so they decided to start looking into Sheila and see what was up. On May 30th, just 4 days after the murder, the LeBaron was found in a Winn-Dixie parking lot on Okeechobee Boulevard in West Palm Beach, which was only about 8 miles from Marlene Warren's house. Inside the car, police found orange and yellow fibers, the same as what was found stuck to the balloon ribbon, and some long strands of dark brown hair. Police were able to get a search warrant for Sheila's apartment. There, they found more orange and yellow fibers stuck to some of her clothing. These were similar to what was found inside the LeBaron and stuck to the balloon ribbon. They also found black combat boots, Doc Marten style, with more orange and yellow fibers stuck to the bottom. Note to self, never buy a cheap clown wig. Apparently the fibers just seem to fall out all over the place. Police then went to the car rental business to interview some of Mike and Marlene's employees. The majority of the employees stated that Mike and Sheila were not really trying to hide their affair. In fact, they would leave the office door open and start making out on Mike's desk. Then the police came upon an employee of Mike and Marlene's named Claude Poitres. I don't know if I said that right. Claude told the police that about a month or so before Marlene was killed, a couple named Mr. and Mrs. Restivo had called asking for instructions about returning their rental car, a white Chrysler LeBaron. But the Restivos had called Mike's place by mistake instead of another car rental place called Payless Rental Car. Mike told the Restivos to just leave the car at their hotel and to put the keys in the visor, and he would see to it that the car was returned. Now, you may be wondering why the Restivos would make a mistake like this. Well, let me tell you. Our Mike is not exactly, let's say, an honest shit snake. In fact, he's pretty greasy. Mike had gotten himself into some trouble in the few months before Marlene's murder. You see, this Payless car rental was doing really well. In fact, so well that Mike had decided they were stealing all of his business. So he came up with a brilliant idea. He was going to create some ads that said to call this number to pay less for a rental car. And he left a really tiny space in between the words pay and less. So when you looked quickly at the ad, it looked like it was an ad for the Payless car rental agency, when in fact, it was the phone number for Mike's business. Sneaky and pretty greasy Mike. The Restivos thought they were actually calling Payless car rental agency when really they were calling Greasy Mike. Claude then told police that he drove Mike and Sheila to the Restivos' hotel, watched them both climb into the LeBaron and drive away. Oh, and before Mike got out of Claude's car, he told Claude not to say anything about them picking up the LeBaron to anyone. When police checked into the VIN number on the LeBaron found in the Winn-Dixie parking lot, they discovered that it had been reported stolen from the Payless car rental agency on May 15th, just a few days before Marlene was murdered. Police brought Sheila in for questioning. They had their gut feelings that Sheila had killed Marlene, but there was really only circumstantial evidence. Remember, this is 1990. There isn't that much technology in terms of DNA or forensic evidence yet. They asked Shit Snake Sheila, I like the sound of that, if she had ever been in a white LeBaron. Of course, Sheila told them that she had never been in one. Shocker. She gave them an alibi for the time of the murder. And with that, the case went cold. You see, back in 1990, even though they had found hair in the LeBaron, they didn't have the technology to find DNA. So there really was only circumstantial evidence. That is until 2013, when the police decided to take another run at some of the evidence that was collected in 1990. First, they had the orange and yellow fibers analyzed, and testing showed that all orange and yellow fibers that were collected in 1990 from the crime scene, Sheila's combat boots, and the LeBaron were identical in composition. Next, they tested the hairs that were found in the LeBaron. Sheila could not be excluded as the source of the hair. Next, they conducted DNA analysis on the skin that was attached to the hair. These tests concluded that the hair had come from Sheila Keene. On October 4th, 2017, they arrested Sheila Keene for the murder of Marlene Warren in 1990. Mike was never charged with any aspect of Marlene's murder, but on October 26, 1990, just a few months after Marlene's murder, Old Greasy Mike was convicted of racketeering and odometer tampering. And for that, he served 3.5 years in jail and was released. By the time Sheila was arrested in 2017, she was living in Virginia with her new husband, Greasy Mike. That's right. Mike and Sheila got married in 2002, and Sheila's divorce from Spud was finalized in 2000. The two lovebirds, Shit Snake Sheila and Greasy Mike, had decided to move out of Florida and get a fresh start when Mike was finished serving his time in jail. Together, they moved to Virginia and opened a restaurant called The Purple Cow in 1993. In case you missed that, they moved to Virginia in 1993. That's only 3 years after Marlene was murdered, and right after Mike got out of jail. You know what? Both of them are pieces of shit. Sheila, of course, denied killing Marlene upon her arrest in 2017. But nobody believed her, and DNA said she did. Because remember, Sheila told the police back in 1990 that she had never been inside a Chrysler LeBaron. If Sheila had never been in a Chrysler LeBaron, how did her hair get inside the LeBaron that was driven by the clown that murdered Marlene? Marlene's trial was supposed to start on September 8th, 2021, but because of our favorite virus, Corona, and the fact that the defense had asked for more time to prepare as the case was so old, the trial was postponed. I'm not sure why, but the prosecutors in the case were not seeking the death penalty, which I'm not sure if they actually could, but in my opinion, if they could have, they should have. In 2023, Sheila took a plea deal. In fact, Sheila took a sweetheart plea deal and pled guilty to the second-degree murder of Marlene Warren. And with that deal, she received 12 years in prison. But, and this is the absolute shit-kicking in the teeth part, Shit Snake Sheila was released in November of 2024 because of time awarded for good behavior and time served. Are you fucking kidding me? She only served 18 months after pleading guilty to killing Marlene. Come on. America, do better. Greg Rosenfeld, Sheila's attorney, stated that Sheila only took the plea deal because she knew she would be released in less than 2 years, and if she was convicted at trial, she would be facing life in jail. Okay, so breaking that statement down tells me that she knew she was going to be convicted because she did it, and because she knew she would get all of this time served credit, she took the plea deal, and the prosecutors allowed this to happen. Do you smell that? That smells like a big steaming pile of horse shit right there to me. This is a bunch of bullshit. According to the court reports, the clown costume and the gun have never, ever been found. Currently, Sheila and Mike are out living their life free and clear and enjoying each other's shit snake company, while Marlene's family and Joey suffer every single day. And that, my friends, is the case of the murder of Marlene Warren. My thoughts. This case is awful. Just freaking awful. First off, using a clown costume to hide behind, that is terrifying. But what this bitch did to Joseph and Marlene's parents is beyond horrific. Have you been wondering why Shit Snake Sheila decided to use a clown costume? It was because Marlene loved clowns. In fact, she used to paint them when she was younger. And how would Shit Snake Sheila know to use a costume of something that Marlene wouldn't be alarmed at seeing? Simple. Greasy Mike told her while they were fooling around and coming up with the plan to kill Marlene. Personally, I think they both should have been charged with first-degree murder. You know, I often wonder, Why don't people just divorce? Why do they stoop to killing the other one's spouse? Just divorce your wife or your husband if you're having an affair and you no longer want to be married to the other person. I have a theory on this, and I may be way off base, but I'm going to tell you my theory. I think it's a high for some people to have an affair. The sneaking around, the trying not to get caught, a little mystery, a little adventure in their lives, which is probably something that they're missing from their marriages. It's just like gambling. You get addicted to the high. And I think that in some extreme cases, such as this one with Sheila and Mike, the act of a simple divorce wouldn't give them enough of a high. You're enjoying the rush. You're enjoying the high that you're getting, same as gambling. And I think it's the same here, that in extreme cases such as this one, the thought of murdering to get rid of the other one's spouse just gives them the potential to get so much more of a high and bring more energy into the illicit relationship that they're having. And I think that's what happens. But I could be way off base. It's just my thought. I believe wholeheartedly that Mike, although he didn't pull the trigger, was just as involved in the planning of this murder as Sheila Keene. And I think that Mike has gotten off scot-free of first-degree murder of his wife. Unfortunately, because the case was so old, there wasn't much prosecutors could do in terms of charging Mike. And I'm sure it's not because they didn't want to. Like many of the cases we see, forensics just wasn't as advanced then as it is now. Time was the giant obstacle for this case. But we do have to give props to the police for not letting it go and looking at it again, and in the end, getting at least some concrete answers for Joey about who killed his mom, even though he probably knew all along who had killed her. I don't like using the term closure because I don't believe closure is an actual thing. There is no closure when someone has been taken from someone's family. There is no end to the grief that is felt by family and loved ones of someone who has been murdered. There is just no end. The grief may ease, it may ebb and flow over the years, but it doesn't go away. It never goes away. Just because a case is 34 years old doesn't mean the person who pulled the trigger is any less guilty. They're still just as guilty as they were on the day of the murder. And time doesn't lighten the pain or horror that Marlene's family felt that day and every day since. I won't say that Joey and Marlene's family got closure because they didn't. And with that, I think we'll leave it there for this week. Stay safe, get your pap test done, and enjoy your day today. This has been a Bitter Witness production.